In the early 90s, what was possible on a home PC was vastly different to what was possible on a home console. There were some limited exceptions to this, such as the Neo Geo, although generally speaking, a lot of the advances in gaming during this time were pioneered on the PC. The CD-ROM format did play a very large part in this, given it could store hundreds of times more data than a traditional game cartridge. I'm not necessarily saying that the PC was a better platform, only that when it came to bold new ideas, it was generally the platform where they arrived first. Another thing about the early 90s was that it saw the release of a lot of video games based on existing franchises, often from movies or even books, which was the case with 1992's Dune. Welcome, my name's Azadesh and welcome to another PC game retrospective video. Now, it's fair to say that I'm a sci-fi fan. I've watched a lot of sci-fi movies, tuned into a lot of sci-fi TV series, including everything from Sequest to Sliders and everything in between, and played more than my fair share of sci-fi video games. But somehow, until recently, I had never read, watched, or played anything relating to the Dune universe. It's not because I was actively avoiding it, because I knew from others that it was a critically acclaimed franchise, but I just never got around to it. Until recently, when I came across a TV series on Apple TV called Dune Prophecy. Now, I didn't actually choose to watch it at that moment, but it did make me go in search of just how many Dune-related things there were. And I've got to say, I was shocked. I was thinking that there was a book, maybe a few movies, and a game or two, where in actual fact, there are 6 books, 3 movies, 3 TV series, and 6 video games. And this isn't even counting the comics, board games, card games, and extended universe books. So yeah, clearly it's a successful franchise and one that I should probably have explored a long time ago. Alas, I recently decided to correct that mistake, but instead of reading the book or watching the movie first, I decided to go straight to the first video game, which to be fair, is based on the first book's story. Now, we're playing the PC CD version here. The game originally released on floppy disk for both the PC and Amiga in 1992, with the CD version coming to the PC and ill-fated Sega CD in 1993. This version included a host of multimedia features such as voice acting, improved rendering, and even some 3D animation. Regardless of which version you play, the story is the same. You get what I would call a condensed version of the book's story. Obviously, when you translate a story from a book to a video game, you're going to lose some detail. But for the most part, the game's story does a really good job of telling the book's story while still having enough creative difference to keep those who know the original story entertained. The story sees the player assume the role of the book's main protagonist, Paul Atreides, who belongs to an affluent family who have recently been given permission to travel to the planet Arrakis, also known as Dune, and mine spice, a rare commodity which, among other things, allows for safe interstellar travel and life extension. Only the Atreides family are not the only ones seeking out spice on Dune, with a rival family, the Harkonnens, already established there and causing a lot of unrest and suffering to the actual native inhabitants of Dune, the Fremen. It's up to Paul to establish the family's spice trade, liberate the Fremen from oppression, and uncover a few secrets about Dune along the way. The presentation of the story is actually really good, and even over 30 years later, and in my case without having the context of the book, I was really drawn into the Dune world. What really helps this is a very strong cast of memorable characters brought to life with well-written dialogue and outstanding voice acting.
I'd also like to meet the Duke and your mother.
Honestly, if you ask me, the voice acting we got in the early 90s was somehow better than that we got in the late 90s. Before we continue, a massive thank you to those who support the channel. If you enjoy this type of content, please consider liking the video or subscribing to the channel. With that out of the way, let's mine some spice, train some troops, and head back to 1992 to remember Dune. If the back of the game box didn't give it away, it doesn't take very long into the actual game to work out that Dune's gameplay isn't really tied to one single genre, but rather a mixture of point-and-click adventuring, real-time strategy, and some role-playing elements. Sometimes when a game tries to do too many things, it ends up doing none well, but that's definitely not the case here, and a big part of that comes down to how all of the systems are interconnected into both gameplay and progression. The game begins in the Atreides palace, or rather a palace that the Atreides appropriated from the Harkonnens, and this is where the game begins what is effectively a tutorial, but one disguised as actual gameplay, something that I really like and does a great job of helping to explain some of the lore as you progress through it. The first person you speak to is your father, and look, you know it's your father because he says to you,
I am the Duke Leto Atreides, your father.
all jokes aside, this is a really good first interaction as it does three things. Introduce a bit of the backstory about why you are on Dune, explain exactly what your long-term goals on Dune are, and set the wheels in motion for the game's first mystery, the disappearance of someone connected to the family. Once you've had this first conversation, you are given relative freedom to do anything you like, and I took that literally and went for a walk in the desert until I fell unconscious and was later found and returned to the palace. Now, while it did serve as somewhat of a setback, after speaking to a few others in the palace, I did learn an important piece of information about requiring a piece of equipment, something called a still suit, to travel by foot without collapsing, something which I would go on to later acquire. Now, funnily enough, the reason I actually passed out in the desert was because I couldn't find my way back to the palace, and this was due to disorientation with how the control system works. Now, look, the control system is fine once you work it out, and to be fair, follows a formula that some, but not all games of the era used, in that when you select left or right, you don't actually turn left or right, but rather strafe left or right. This design meant that when I thought I was turning left and going forward, I was actually strafing left and going forward, obviously ending up in quite a different location and not being able to backtrack correctly without knowing this. There is an on-foot map you can use when inside the palace to help you navigate. However, there is no on-foot map when outside, apart from the globe map, which doesn't show your position. Regardless though, once you understand how the control system works, it's unlikely to ever be an issue again, which is good because throughout the adventure, you will find yourself moving a lot as you travel to a variety of locations around Dune and meet more of the locals to try and convince them to work for you in the aid of the ultimate goal of spice production. Now, some of these Fremen are very easy to convince. You literally just ask them to work for you and they agree.
Yes, I agree to let my troops work for you.
Others will require you to complete other tasks first to convince them that you can be trusted.
I'm not quite sure that you're able to appreciate our skills yet.
There are also other locals, including several love interests, that the player is required to seek out and interact with to progress the game's main story, while also unlocking some new abilities. The pace in which you do this is largely up to the player. Again, it affords the player a significant amount of agency as to just how they want to play the game. Probably the one thing that was a source of minor frustration, and again, this wasn't unique to Dune, this challenge was present across a lot of games in the early 90s, is the sometimes trial and error nature of asking the right question to the right person to progress the main story. Now, I keep saying main story. Dune uses a type of day and night cycle, which is constantly counting the days the player has spent on Dune. And look, if you wanted to pause the entire main story and just play through the game's strategy elements, you could. I mean, it's not the most deep real-time strategy in isolation from the rest of the game, but it's certainly possible. However, for the full Dune experience, you need to progress through the main story, and once again, finding the right person to ask the right question can be a challenge at times. There's also a bit of a strange list of commands when interacting with other characters, with you being able to talk to them or ask them what. What, no pun intended, this often led to was clicking both the what and the talk to me until the dialogue trees were exhausted. It's not a big issue, but I think a little more could have been done to either simplify what's here or go in the completely opposite direction and offer more options with more content. Oh, and you can also ask them to join you or stay in a particular location, which again is required for some of the progression. There's also a benefit to the player visiting each of the Fremen leaders that agree to work for him, as this will increase their overall morale and make them more efficient. The other part of the game is the real-time strategy, and while the actual RTS elements are quite light on, the context that the point-and-click side of the game gives the player makes it appear to have a lot more depth than it actually does. I said earlier that the player's main mission on Dune was to mine spice, and don't worry, in case you forget it, you are frequently reminded.
Paul, don't forget the spice shipments for the Emperor. Paul, don't forget the spice shipments for the Emperor.
What this means is that you assume control of the various Fremen groups and tell them where they should mine. Now, while you start the game with some visibility on the location of spice to mine, you will need to use a specific group of Fremen called prospectors to determine where the richest deposits are. This will enable you to send your Fremen to the best locations for mining. As the game story progresses, you do gain access to more equipment to help you mine more efficiently, but equally, the game's starting deposits are quickly emptied, meaning that you need to be constantly assigning your prospectors to new locations to explore. A short while after you start mining, you receive a message from the Emperor asking you to send a shipment of spice to him.
I want a shipment of spice today.
And at first, I ignored this. Then, when I was reminded by another party member, I still ignored it, instead choosing to continue to explore and find more spice. And then, the next time I travelled to another location, I died in a cutscene that revealed it was on the order of the Emperor. This confused me because I was explicitly told,
My son, we must mine the spice as soon as possible, or the Emperor will recall us from Dune.
So yeah, don't trust the Emperor. Now, this was actually my first skill check in the game, as I had not saved for quite some time, and while there is an autosave system as such, it autosaves when you arrive at a new location, something I had done just before my fateful journey onwards, meaning that particular save was essentially soft-locked. A lesson was learnt: save more frequently, something which can be done at any time from the main menu. One of the other occupations you can assign the Fremen is military training, and yeah, for seemingly peaceful people, they always sound really excited about it.
There's nothing like military training.
Regardless, once you have trained Fremen in military training, you can then use them to attack the various Harkonnen locations around the map, with a successful attack resulting in you liberating that location and often meeting some new people, while a failed attack will result in your troops being captured. Overall, the gameplay comes together really well, and the constantly counting clock brings a little more urgency to your typical point-and-click adventure. Probably the only thing which I think could have been improved was the mapping system within the RTS side of the game. The scale and scrolling at times makes it a challenge to get any real situational awareness of where your troops are, which can hamper some of the strategy involved in combat. However, there is certainly a case to be made for this game being a product of 1992. Presentation-wise, Dune is really good and certainly goes a long way to support the idea that good art is timeless. All of the environments and characters are well detailed and provide for the time an immersive experience. There's also a lot of little things here which you wouldn't expect from a game released during this time, such as the gradual transition between time of day while outside and the smoothness of the 3D animated sections. Probably my only issue around the presentation is the fact that instead of loading the game to a menu where you can select from a list of saved games, it loads you to the beginning of the game every single time, requiring you to then make several menu movements to load your last save. And honestly, this is a trend from this period that I never actually understood. It's certainly not from being lazy, as there is actually several places you can load your game from, both the menu and the mirror room. I don't know, there must have been a reason for it, just not one that I'm aware of. The sound design is incredible, the music is really well paired to the various locations and themes in the game, and despite being on quite a short loop, never really got old, a sure sign of some good composition. The voice acting is also really good. You can tell that all of the voice actors were really invested in delivering their lines as part of a broader story, as opposed to just reading a set of lines off a page.
Yes, I know a still suit maker. You will find him if you fly eastward in your Orni. It's not very far, but be sure to fly with someone. Seaches are well hidden and not easy to find.
Oh, and one really nice quality of life feature is the ability to control the music volume both in and out of speech with other characters, meaning you can enjoy the music louder during the main gameplay loop and still hear spoken dialogue clearly. Now, I came into Dune with low expectations. I wasn't even sure that I'd be able to understand what was fully going on without having read the book. However, I have to give the game credit that it does a great job of taking the original story and converting it into a gameplay experience that stays both faithful to the original tale while offering enough gameplay variety to keep the player engaged. In reflection, having now played the game and learnt about the Dune universe, I regret not having explored it sooner. Not only is Dune the game an entertaining standalone experience, but the universe is certainly an interesting one and one that I'm keen to explore further. Now, as I said before, there is a lot of Dune media between movies, TV series, games, and much more, and it's certainly going to take some time to explore it all. I'm already eyeing off the semi-recently released Dune Spice Wars on Steam, although I am also wanting to add the Ultimate Sci-Fi series to my physical collection, which includes Dune 2000. If you do have a recommendation for either of these games or something else, please do comment below, and perhaps I'll be able to cover it off in a future video. But for now, that's enough from me. Do you agree or disagree with my opinions? Let me know down in the comments below. And as always, thanks for watching.